Hey, thank you everyone for joining another episode of Next in Queue. I'm your host, Rob Dwyer, and today, our special little Christmas edition, I have joining me the co-CEOs of Cloud Solutions, Louise and Kenneth Kuaea. How are you?
We're great. Thank you.
We're
Thank
doing
you, Rob.
great, Rob. Thanks for having us.
I am very excited to have you because Cloud Solutions is really unique, and so we'll talk about that a little bit. But before we get to your company and kind of what it's currently doing, I want to take a step back because I one of the things that I love about all the guests that I have on the show are these really interesting career arcs. Both of you have really interesting career arcs, and certainly you didn't start out in the contact center business. So, um, who'd like to go first and kind of give a little bit of background because you both have some really interesting um, histories, we should say.
Yes, we do. I sometimes say that we have eclectic backgrounds, but what brought us to American Samoa is what's interesting as well. Both Kenneth and I, we are born and raised Californians. However, our parents migrated from American Samoa to California in the early 60s and raised their families there. And we're of the same ethnicity, and that's how we met in those small circles. But Ken had a desire, maybe I think since we've been married, to return back to the islands and to learn more about our culture and to give back where we could. And we decided to make that leap in 2015, 2016.
Yes.
And that's what took us back home. And we learned so much about the island. We weren't anticipating getting into this industry either, but we just knew we had a desire to help our people in some way. And generating jobs was a big thing for us in terms of finding ways to help build the economy and things of that sort. So we, in 2018, American Samoa invested in a fiber optic cable, and that was called the Hawaiian. And we were there when we received high-speed internet on island, so that was a big deal for us. And we were working with some friends in Las Vegas who was actually they were uh, they
Yeah.
provided.
Yeah, they had about 10 plus years in the contact center industry
Yeah.
providing customer support solutions for hotels, boutique hotels throughout the U.S. And
Okay.
so we had partnered with them and we were essentially recruiting remote customer service agents from the island to participate in customer support solutions for them. And just started growing from that. We did that for a couple of years, testing the network, internet connectivity, et cetera, systems and whatnot to see how viable this industry might be in American Samoa. And then we pursued some funding with the government, some startup capital, and we initiated some partnerships with the Department of Commerce on island for some funding for equipment, and then also a partnership with the telecom provider on island. And through that tripartite partnership, if you will, we were able to build the first contact center in American Samoa and hired our own customer service agents and launched. This is all pre-pandemic. Um, and so it's been quite a roller coaster ride once the pandemic hit. We had just opened our doors to the contact center and we were thriving. We had secured an account with the state of New York, their unemployment insurance department. They were needing help processing their claims. And so we had gone through a hiring blitz, picking up 75 people on island, training them and on New York's systems on how to process unemployment claims. And then the pandemic was in full swing. Our government, our local government, placed restrictions, business hours restrictions on all of the non-essential, so-called non-essential businesses on island. And unfortunately, our company was looped into that category. And so our business hours were limited from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the island, which is Samoa Standard Time. But that disabled us from being able to provide 24/7 support to the New York account.
To any account,
And
to
to
that,
the other,
really.
yeah,
Yeah.
to the other accounts.
Yeah.
I think we kind of went past what he was asking.
Oh.
Sorry, Rob.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think we should lay a little bit of information out there for our listeners, because I could be wrong, but I think a lot of people are not all that familiar with American Samoa. So
Okay.
this
No, you're
is
right.
this is a U.S. territory that, I feel like most Americans who grow up in the mainland don't learn a whole heck of a lot about. And so your time zone, we can just start there. You're what 6 hours off of, like, I'm in Central Time, and I think you're
Mm-hmm.
6 hours behind that even.
Yes. Yeah.
That
American
about
Samoa.
7 hours
Yeah,
off of Eastern.
yes, that's correct. About 7 hours off of East Coast time. We're located in the South Pacific Ocean. The U.S. territory of American Samoa is about halfway between Hawaii and New Zealand. So it's about from the California coast, it's about an 11-hour plane ride.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one. Previously, pre-pandemic, there were only 2 flights coming into the island per week. And now with the pandemic, there's only been maybe 1 or 2 flights a month coming in. So we've been kind of cut off from the rest of the world. But yes.
But the timeline goes like right between both of Samoa. So we are the American territory of Samoa, and then there's the international, Western Samoa.
Independent.
And so they're the first to see the sun, and we're the last to see the sun.
Yes.
In terms of the time zone. So it's really interesting how it just cuts through our islands right there. So
Yeah, it really is fascinating. So the international date line just kind of goes right between,
yeah,
and you bring up a really interesting point that Samoa is really what I think most Americans think of as American Samoa, because we have that relationship and have for a really long time. But there is another Samoa, which
Yes.
is is essentially right next door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
referred to sometimes as the two Samoas. I don't really like to call it that, but
Yeah. Within our community, we're culturally, linguistically, we're one people, and we refer to it as our sister island, but politically it's divided because of what took place back in the early 1900s and imperialism and manifest destiny, and the U.S. looking for a strategic military foothold in the Pacific, as well as Great Britain and Germany. They were all trying to expand out into the Pacific, and so our islands got divided up.
mm-hmm. And American Samoa is the only U.S. territory in the South Pacific.
Correct.
We're right under the equator line, Rob. So
Right.
mm-hmm.
U.S. point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So very tropical climate that you've got there, and for those that are not familiar, I mean, the whole territory is roughly about the size of Washington D.C., so it's not terribly big. And
No.
yeah, 11 hours is that's a long flight.
Yes, it is.
It's nice to break it up though in Hawaii. A lot of people
Yeah.
spend time in Hawaii too, so it's not so bad.
Taking a break in Hawaii, I've heard is just pretty great in general.
Very true. Very true.
So some of the things that uh so did you two of you meet in college at BYU, or did you know each other in California before then?
Oh, we kind of did. Ken went to Brigham Young University in Provo, and I attended BYU in Hawaii for
Oh,
a
okay.
short time. But because I think we're of the same ethnicity and even religion, our circles were smaller,
Hmm.
Yeah,
and it was easier for us to meet.
yeah, we did meet during that time. I was going to school at BYU Provo, and when we connected, Louisa, I think, was back in California, returning from BYU
Mhm.
Hawaii, and I had come home during the summer, home from Utah back to California, Long Beach, where I'm from. And Louisa had come down from the Bay Area, where she's from, Alameda, Oakland area. She had come down to see her sister, spend time with her sister down in LA, and we ended up in the
Mhm.
same church and
Yeah.
various.
And Ken just
activities.
had returned from a 2-year mission in Japan,
Yeah,
and so the timing was right for us.
yeah,
So that's where we met.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so uh Ken, you speak Japanese, I understand. Is that correct?
that's correct. I do. Yeah, it was a lovely experience out there in Japan, getting to know the people there. So yes, Nihongo hanashimasu ka? I
That
asked if
just
you
went
spoke
right
Japanese.
over my head, and the answer is
Okay.
no. I know.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, I love the Japanese people and the Japanese language. I've lost quite a bit not using it every day, but it comes back to me the more I start to speak it and hear
Sure,
it.
sure. And I mentioned early on, uh, the two of you, as I think Louise put, have eclectic backgrounds. I mean, you spent some time as an AT&T service technician. You were briefly a firefighter,
Yeah.
and you eventually got your JD at BYU and moved into government and teaching. So you've done a lot of different things. I imagine you're quite the cook too. Spent some time at the Culinary Institute.
Yeah, I have such a diverse uh, palette in terms of interests. So yeah, when we first got married, I was working as a firefighter for the California Department of Forestry in Napa, and then just yeah, things had changed. My wife was
But he's
concerned
always
about
been
me.
an excellent cook.
Yeah,
And that was our deal. He had done his undergrad at Berkeley, and he wanted to go to culinary school in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and he had pursued law school as well. And when he received his acceptance letter to BYU for law, he was sort of debating which way he was going to go. I'm like, dude, you can go to any culinary school. You better finish law school and then decide. And so he did that. He did the 4-year JD MPA program at BYU. And immediately after that, Rob, I didn't even know it. Next thing you know, he's like, okay, I'm going to class. I'm like, where are you going? And he had signed up for the Park City Culinary Institute right after. I'm benefiting totally from this experience, but it was just kind of funny how he just went and pursued that. There's just something about food that we just love. So
Learning how to cook is that's a skill you can employ your entire life for sure. So Luis, speaking of Alameda, you were
yes,
actually once a police officer there, right?
I was, and I loved it. That was the city I grew up in. I was able to give back as as a police officer. Total fluke though. I had after after school I had gotten in. I had worked for Target Corporation for many years in their marketing department and really got my feet wet in corporate there. And after I think it was about 10 years, um, we got pregnant. I decided, okay, I'm going to stay home, and then things had shifted for us to a point where I needed to get back into the workforce. Ken was in a really bad accident, and and
AT&T.
at AT&T, and so I decided to try my hand back in getting into work. And many of the jobs that I had felt would I was qualified for in the marketing space would require us to move away from the Bay Area. And I was just doing a job search and was looking at the city of Alameda, their marketing position, and came across a police officer position. And Ken and I just kind of jokingly said, "Oh, let's try this out." And I did. I applied for it, went through the whole process of, recruitment for training, and I did really well. And I accepted a position as a police officer for the city of Alameda. And
So for about 3 years. Right?
yeah, a little over 3 years. Great agency, great people. That was really a great experience in terms of community work for me and being able to give back to the city that I grew up in. I grew up in low-income housing in Alameda, and I was the housing liaison at that point, and got to work with families that I grew up with. It was a really cool experience. And then Ken decided to accept his offer to law school in Utah, and that's when we decided to sell our home in the Bay and move to Utah.
Although we had driven back to the Bay and seen our old home. We had remodeled it before we left, and so we went back and saw it. We see now that it's in the 7 figures range in terms of.
I know. We're like, why did we hold on to that house?
Yeah, that will happen in the Bay Area for sure. I mean, going from marketing to the academy seems like a bit of a stretch, but it sounds to me like I hear this common thread in talking to both of you about giving back and about giving back to your community, and you both seem very involved in your communities in a lot of different ways. So when you decided to open a brand new business, this contact center business, Cloud Solutions, back on American Samoa, I'm curious what challenges you had to overcome. I'm thinking of kind of that knowledge of the industry in general, and it sounds like the two of you had a little bit of that going on, but did you have to bring in some outside expertise to get things rolling, or did you rely on the talent that was on the island for kind of the leadership positions? Tell me more about how that all transpired.
Great question. So, but even before we moved back to American Samoa, Ken and we had pursued higher education because we felt we needed the credentials to get back there and to be taken seriously. We didn't want to move back to American Samoa without being able to have some sort of knowledge base or domain knowledge to give back to the island. And so, he and I did 4 years of school at BYU and gained 4 degrees together. And then after that, he had pursued a teaching position in American Samoa, which actually took us there. And when we got to American Samoa, we never thought we would. I don't think we, I
It was the furthest thing from our
thought
mind
we would get
that we
into
imagined.
the
Contact
center industry. Yeah. So when we got there, and just the timing of it all, like I said, high-speed internet came, and we had friends in Vegas that were, providing outsourcing for the hotel or hospitality industry. And they approached us really to see about expanding in American Samoa. And the American Samoa government wanted to test out like their network and provide a proof of concept too. So we were being approached at both ends, and we thought this would be a great opportunity. Ken and I, I've always felt I've had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I've been in corporate all this time, and neither of us had started our own business at all. And so this was new territory for us. We relied heavily on our network of people, industry experts from the states, as well as, relying heavily on our government and providing an opportunity for us to all work together to create this contact center or call center.
Some of the challenges that we experienced though early on, for example, with the remote customer service type position, especially the at-home agent type setup, was our people weren't quite accustomed to that type of work situation or work scenario. And so if you can imagine, a lot of the homes in American Samoa, they have tin roofs. And being as tropical as it is, when it rains, I mean, it literally sounds like there's a fire hydrant dumping water on top of your tin roof. And so you can imagine that. And then there's chickens and roosters and dogs.
It sounds like we're in a jungle.
It sounds like you were in a jungle. Right? And it's beautiful. It's beautiful in terms of sounds that you hearing nature, and you can go to sleep to. It's wonderful. But when you're answering a call for a high-end hotel, and then you have a rooster
crowing or dogs barking. Oh man, I wish we could send you some video footage, Rob, just about how creative we've had to be, just kind of playing charades almost. Like I would be pointing at Ken and telling him to go and adjust the dogs with my finger, and he'd be outside throwing rocks out there and trying to settle the noise, and just the things that we go through trying to keep the noise down. And so we've learned that the three requirements that are necessary for successful, work from home is a quiet space, reliable internet, and also good equipment. And if you don't have one of those three components, it really disqualifies you for the work. And so that's why we had pursued creating an actual center on island with the Department of Commerce, and it's been great. And so our strategy was thinking, okay, we bring our agents in and teach them and train them, and then we graduate or transition them out of the center to work from home.
Right. Once they've learned the importance of those three components and have established those components at home, then we're able to graduate them out to their home office spaces, if you will. But it was just interesting in the
so funny.
We'd be having training. We'd have training sessions, and we'd have all of our agents, please have your cameras on. And they'd have their cameras on, and then you'd see children walking across the screen and pulling on mommy, and some of them would be outside,
some half dressed. It was a new way of working, and this is prior to the pandemic. So, but now that we've had the pandemic, those things are more tolerable. But prior to that, we've got
the growing
some great footage for Comedy Hour, I think.
Well, I think you bring up something that is really a very interesting result of the pandemic, and that is just the acceptance and understanding of work from home and customer service. It seems like over the last 2 years, a lot of the expectations around customer service are different, not in how we make a customer feel, or how we handle an issue or anything like that. But just in those, kind of unexpected noises, I think a lot of people now think that there's a good chance this person I'm talking to over the phone works from home.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you hear more and more people saying, "Oh, that's my dog. Excuse me,"
Yeah.
Right.
Previously, we had to try
but
to
we didn't have that luxury, when we started. We had to somehow hide that all.
try to
Right.
camouflage that.
And now there's software that actually blocks out that type of noise too. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing what you can do with the right technology. You can really
for sure,
accomplish so much.
for sure.
Well, I remember I talked with Louise at an ICMI event earlier this year, and I suggested that she should join the podcast. And um, this, I think, is really enlightening. It seems like you are doing something that is really great for the island. And I know through my own research, although I wouldn't have known this right ahead of time, like there are just kind of limited industries there. Been very reliant on the tuna canning industry, and um, lots of military recruitment there. For those that don't know, it's um, a very large percentage of American Samoans go into the United States military, much higher than any state in the
Yeah,
union for sure. But this
you're
seems
right.
like a new avenue now, right? Now that you've got this great internet connection, that this is something that is now possible, and you guys are making it happen.
Yeah, thanks for raising that. We are a very patriotic uh, island. Our people love the fact that we are connected to the United States, and as you said, we are the number one military recruiting location within the United States per capita. Um, but as you mentioned, also very limited in terms of the economy and
And resources,
industries that are on
industry.
island. And we've been supported, or the tuna canning industry has been the main pillar of the economy over the last several decades. And the tuna companies came in based on the premise of uh, labor, cheap labor, essentially, at
Hmm.
that time, decades ago. And that has shifted as labor has become more affordable to many of these corporations in other parts of the world. And then also with robotics and automation and so forth, the tuna canning process is no longer sustainable in American Samoa because of the increase in minimum wages and robotics, et cetera. And so a lot of the companies have left. And there's just, I think, two that are left on the island. And the people have also shifted in terms of their mentality and their desire to do that type of work, where you're standing on your feet on an assembly line, filleting and cleaning fish, hours on end. It's backbreaking work, and so we were really concerned if this. We could see that the companies were going to leave the island just because of the schedule, the minimum wage schedule the federal government has placed in American Samoa. The incremental increases are going to get to a point where the government or these companies are not going to be able to want to be there. And we understand that that point is very, very close. And so Louisa and I, when high-speed internet came there and we started recruiting people for remote customer service work, we started to see, wait a minute, this industry, the outsourcing, business process outsourcing industry, remote customer service work, is a billion, I think it's somewhere in the 130, $140 billion industry. And if we could bring this to American Samoa, we could totally help our people shift from the manufacturing,
Mhm.
agriculture, sort of um, mindset or work that we've been dependent on, and help them transition into the digital market, into
and
the
more of a
digital world.
service and technology
Right.
industry.
And so that's what's really been driving us, Louisa and I, to get this, to build this, and to pursue accounts in the States, is to help our people who are very American, if you will, in terms of their heart, their affinity, their loyalty, their patriotism, trying to help them receive these work opportunities where companies here in the States have been outsourcing to offshore opportunities or solutions providers in places like the Philippines and India and places down in Latin America. We are pitching to our compatriots, if you will. We are an onshore provider of customer support. Our people are American. Our people are U.S. citizens and U.S. nationals. We speak English just like how you hear us speaking English.
With the North American accent. Yeah. We feel like we found our niche. We are that onshore option or solution. We're not as pricey or costly as domestic options, but we're also not cheap labor, and we provide a quality type of service, and people can feel very comfortable not having to take their jobs out of the country, and you're able to get the same, almost, equivalent service, if not better, from American Samoans. And we want people to know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting opportunity that the two of you are really entering into. I know that you've been in it for a couple of years now, but I think there's certainly a lot of opportunity for growth for you, and I just think it's a really wonderful thing that you are doing. So, congrats to both of you.
Oh,
thank
you,
Rob.
Rob. We really appreciate it. I appreciate your platform and the opportunity to kind of share our story and connect with people in your sphere, in your circle.
Mm-hmm. We're seeing more and more American Samoa on the drop-down list when you're online. Before, when we got there, we'd always click when people would ask, or systems would ask for our location, or our zip code was not on there, and I was like, why are we not on here? And you'd see Guam, you'd see Puerto Rico, even the Virgin Islands, but no American Samoa. But now more and more, because I'd call companies. I'm like, okay, why don't you have American Samoa? They're like, American what? What are you? Where are you? I'm like,
yeah, stop forgetting about us. Well, I really appreciate the two of you taking time to join me, and this is our special Christmas episode. So, by the way, Merry Christmas to both of you.
Oh, yes. Manuela Karissimasi.
Yes, Manuela Karissimasi.
That is beautiful, and I'm not going to even try because I'll butcher it. So, I appreciate you both. You have a wonderful holiday season, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Thanks again for joining me on Next in Queue.
Thank you, Rob. So much, Rob. Thank you to all your listeners. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Yes, thank you so much to your team, and thank you for having us on. We feel honored.
So in Samoa, the way you say goodbye is Tofa Soifua.
Tofa Soifua.
That is a perfect way to end this session.